szepnęło, to jest on. I nie wiem skąd, przecież jesteś obcy, są w mieście inni chłopcy. Ciebie pamiętam z wszystkich stron. Kupiłeś ergo i w mym sklepiku zwykle tak pełnym krzyku wszystko zamilkło, nawet ja. Mówiąc adieu, ty się śmiałeś do mnie, ach, jak mi żal ogromnie, że cię nie znałam tego dnia. O mój wymarzony, o mój wytęskniony, nie wiesz o tym przecież ty, że w małym miasteczku za tobą ktoś wypłakał z oczu łzy, że biedna Rebeka w zamyśleniu czeka, aż przyjedziesz po nią sam i zabierzesz ją jako żonę swą hen do pałacu bram. Ten krzyk, ten gwałt, ten cud ja sobie wyobrażam, Boże mój. Na rynku cały lud, a na mnie błyszczy biały, weselny strój. O mój wymarzony, o mój wytęskniony, czy ktoś kocha cię jak ja? Lecz ja jestem biedna.
Polish people are very resilient, ladies and gentlemen. Very resilient community. They've gone through so much. I'm sure you agree with me, Lord Lieutenant. And what you just heard, it's heartbreaking. People lost their parents, brother, sibling, mom, and later on their life, some found their family, some hasn't. That's very moving. But what really, maybe little bit we feel happy, and maybe those family who suffered, what they found, maybe little bit of happiness that the rest of us, we remember them. We talk about them. And that's very important. We talk about. We talk at school.
To visitor, a lady who's done more for Poles in Bristol and the West Country than possibly anyone else I can think of, is sadly unable to be here. But she too has sent a message, and our past chairman, Anne Foote, will read it for you.
Thank you.
Anne.
Could you hold the mic for me?
Okay. I should be a microphone stand.
Well, first of all, I must say that you and the committee have organised this beautifully, and the work you've put in. Can you hear me? Yes. Now, I have much pleasure in reading Zita's letter to you. Zita went to Siberia, was taken to Siberia when she was just 5, and but came to England when she was about 14, and after being in Gloucestershire was down near Newton Abbot at Stover, and she went to school in Newton Abbot, and she always says she thanks the people down there. She got the scholarship to Bristol University, and knowing that she always did things for, and always has done things for other people rather than herself, she won a prize from the school, and the headmaster insisted that she should spend it on herself. And she bought an overcoat, and she said that enabled her to come to Bristol University. And after getting her degree at Bristol, she did the teacher training, and she spent her life teaching in Bristol schools and the area, usually disadvantaged children. And then when she retired, she went and took a bus virtually every day out to go to the Young Offenders Institute and to teach them. And so you can see what a devoted lady she has been and how much we regard her. And in fact, the city of Bristol regarded her because she did, a few years back, receive a Lord Mayor's Medal. It was a great surprise to her. She's the sort of person that never expects to be thanked, but she will always do for the Anglo-Polish Society, for English and Polish people, as much as she possibly can. And so it gives me great pleasure to read this, what she's written. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for not attending this meeting, as I'm visiting my husband Stan, who is in the retirement home in Ilford Park after his long illness. On his and my behalf, I wish to thank all the contributors who made it possible for this book to be produced. In war and in peace, we have been friends. The Poles here and in Poland remember with gratitude the words of the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain on the 3rd of September 1939. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note, stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. Although we did not receive any military support during the phony war, as Britain was not prepared for war, however, Britain was the only country that stood against the German aggression. It was the only country that Polish pilots, sailors and soldiers could come to fight against the common enemy. After the war, those who could not return to communist Poland settled here and received friendship and hospitality in this country. At school, it is my privilege to be a member of the Anglo-Polish Society. Thank you. Has organised things so well. He gave me a phone call and said, I'll give you Zita's letter when you arrive. But he didn't tell me when I was going to have to read it. So you saw me there, floating, waiting for the call and wondering if I'd be, because I had this responsibility. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
And now,
you have a book, and I've been very lucky because I've had a quick look at it. It's a substantial production, believe me. It's very handsomely produced, and it's got a huge richness of heritage in between its covers. And I warmly recommend you all to read every word of it and to pass it to as many of your friends as you can, be they Polish or English, or anybody anywhere in the world should read some of these stories. I want to congratulate you all because it is actually very hard work to sustain voluntarily the sort of enthusiasm that you all have put into this project and to achieve such an outstanding result. For the Heritage Lottery Fund, it's an incredibly good value, a relatively small sum amongst the monies that we have. We actually have 10 million for the Southwest region this year. Your money is a very small part, but the outcome is really substantial.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that warm endorsement. It's much appreciated. And if you've got 10 million, we'll be round tomorrow to see how much. Yes, I think we did. We clearly can't run through the whole of the book with everybody, but what we thought we'd do was we've taken a few extracts. They're not at random, but they are taken to go from before the war to the current day, and they'll be read by a selection of people, and Graz will lead them off.
Pre-war. This is an extract from Melania Shumiwo's story, Forest Without Getting Lost. Little did he know that this information would help save their lives in the future. The summers were a period of great activity, particularly during the harvest, when villagers would come to the farm to help with the work. My babcia, that's grandmother, Antonina, was very quick and skilled at using a scythe. The women...
This extract is called The Outbreak of War by Hieronym Sembrowicz. My father was born in 1908 in Poland. He qualified as a vet at Warsaw University, and by 1939 he was working as a district veterinary officer in the Katowice area. On September the 1st he was in a village later to become notorious called Oświęcim. Mobilisation had been ordered for the coming war, and cattle were being directed to slaughter to provide meat supplies for the next few weeks. War had been clearly expected for some time, and he had immobilised and then buried his second best motorbike, a BMW, in the orchard at his home, keeping the valve lifters in his knapsack. The front line was suddenly overrun by the German blitzkrieg, and he recalled that there were German tanks in the fields, 40 miles behind the front line. Roads became choked with refugees, and his unit's lorry set off eastwards with his belongings on board. Alas, he never caught up with them, and arrived in Romania, where he and other Poles encountered frontline units of the Red Army, who were then invading Poland from the east. He was arrested and interrogated by the NKVD, Stalin's secret police force. He was, by great good fortune, given a laissez-passer written on a scrap of paper with blue crayon, and this allowed him to travel onwards. Others were less fortunate, and his roommate was among the thousands of victims arrested, later to be shot by the NKVD in the Katyn forest.
The extract I'm going to read is called The Deportations by Malwina Perczyńska. I'm very touched to have been asked to read this extract. I don't think I said to you, Grażynka, that to a very large extent this is also my mother's story. My mother also was deported from eastern Poland, and like the author here, spent some years in Siberia. This author went on to spend her teenage years in Africa. My mother spent her teenage years in Palestine, being educated in a school paid for by the British in Nazareth. And 2 years ago I went to see that school where my mother spent her teenage years, and it was a moving experience for me. So, the deportations. During the war, on the 10th of February 1940, the Russians came during the night and told us we were leaving. We were not allowed to take anything at all. They took all our papers, documents, photos, and even money. They took us to the railway station, where we were loaded into the cattle trucks, already packed with lots of people. We were cold, as the temperature was -20. There was a hole in the middle of the wagon to be used as a toilet. We were deported to Siberia. We lived in a little building with no heating and had only straw for a mattress. I was made to attend Russian school. My older brother and sister were put to work in the forest cutting trees. The work was very hard, and they were told, if you don't work, you don't eat. Many people died there. My mother was good at telling fortunes, and she was paid in bread. Then I got ill and went to hospital. The lady doctor was very kind, and when I got better, she asked me if I wanted to go and live with her and her family. I looked after her 2 children so she could spend time breeding silkworms. After the amnesty in 1941, we were on the move again. We were taken to Uzbekistan. During the journey, the train stopped and we were cold and hungry. We heard that there were people dishing soup some distance away, so my father with other men went there. In the meantime, the train started on its journey again, and we never saw our father again. My brother seemed to have disappeared too. As we had no one in the Polish army, we were destined to stay in Uzbekistan. By chance, my mother met a Polish soldier who informed her that there was an orphanage a few kilometers away, and she could take us there, and she did just that. Soon afterwards, our orphanage left Russia. We reached Pahlavi in Persia, now Iran. We lived on the beach in tents. The whole orphanage was deloused, all our clothes burnt and our heads shaved. That was the only way we could get rid of the lice. We had some second-hand clothes sent from America. The next destination was Tehran, where we were informed we were going to East Africa. In 1942, we reached Mombasa and ended up in Tengaru. It was a very big place, almost in the jungle, close to Mount Meru. The food in the orphanage was not very good. The soup was cooked in huge pots outside. There were small insects floating in it, but we were told these were herbs, which we believed. At least we were not starving. We had teachers, but not classrooms, and we had lessons under the trees outside. Eventually, the schools were built, and we started full-time education. And that's where I finished secondary school with good grades. I belonged to the Girl Guides and several religious organisations. I also discovered boys. Together with my friends, we spent a lot of time exploring the jungle, and we swam in the Lake Duluti. We lived in round mud huts with no proper windows, just wooden shutters. Many times you would find a snake curled up under your bed. We also had to have mosquito nets over our beds. Very often we suffered from malaria. Through the Red Cross, we found our mother. She lived in Rhodesia. She came over in 1944 and took us out of the orphanage. We also found our brother. He lived in Holland. And my husband and I visited him later on, and we were surprised that he spoke fluent Dutch.
masz na sobie taki dziwny strój.
Jam z niewoli polski żołnierz, został mi z munduru kołnierz i podszyty wiatrem płaszcz. To z niewoli polski żołnierz, został mu z munduru kołnierz i podszyty wiatrem płaszcz.
The Warsaw Uprising by Halina Radoszewska. The Warsaw Uprising started on the 1st of August and lasted until the 3rd of October 1944. The Polish soldiers, who were waiting for it in several locations, joined the ones in Warsaw when the long-awaited order at last arrived and our fight for freedom began. These were very hard times. The German army's superiority was immense. The expected help from the Allies did not materialize. It was then when I gave first aid to my heavily wounded brother, who was a member of a different platoon than me, and had to leave him awaiting the return of his first aiders and return to my station.
I went to a school yesterday and we talked about Holocaust, and I have seen students has researched information, put a tree, and different students leaving different messages, which is very encouraging. And we should encourage every school to teach their children about Holocaust, about their journey, what parents and grandparents gone through. It's very important. But let's talk about a little bit Polish community here in Bristol, if you allow me. Earlier on I said very resilient, very supportive community as well. When we invite different communities, for example, at the Mansion House or other events, we see Polish community there. And it is official now. The Polish is the biggest speaking language in United Kingdom after English. And I know a little bit, like Yorkshire Marsh, Warda Dobrze, Dziękuję. And I would encourage those of you who don't know Polish, please learn. Very interesting language. Very nice people. I haven't been to Poland yet, but I would want to go. And I saw John Pryor got a book, so maybe our Lord Lieutenant soon will be visiting Poland. So yes, it is a diversity. Every community welcome here in this great city. So is Polish, and we will see soon Polish people are taking different jobs in Bristol, contributing our society, contributing our economy. And I would thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, taking the time. And it's very important history. The book is very important to note. I was thinking when you were reading, I'm from Bangladesh, and you asked actually to talk about a little bit of how I came and so on. I was thinking, we went to war as well, my family, 1971 and beyond. But I don't think my family has written anywhere anything. So I was thinking when I was listening, when I go home, I'll ask my mom, you must tell me your experience, and we should write it down. It's very important because otherwise you will be lost. Yes, nobody will know. So well done. You put on, this on the book, and I accepted the book on behalf of the city, and I will certainly read, and I'll put it in the Mansion House, so maybe my next Lord Mayor can read as well, and I'll encourage them to read. So thank you for inviting us here and welcome Ian Bolton again. Thank you.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the contributors. Some found it extremely painful to recall memories. They survived Siberia, they survived Warsaw Uprising, the concentration camps, the battles in which they were engaged. But it wasn't all very depressing because there were quite a number of contributions where the writers mentioned very happy childhoods, a carefree environment in the resettlement camps in the West Country. In all, there were 79 contributors. Some were family members. The age of the contributors is from 9 to 90. And they wrote about their experiences, and I don't want to repeat what Chris has already said, that it's an extraordinary record of people of different generations who settled here. You may not be aware how long the Association of Poles with the West Country is. It goes back to 1940. A Polish squadron, 307 of the city of Lwów, defended Exeter in a very great battle. Several of the pilots lost their lives and are buried in Exeter. The Polish Navy was based in Plymouth, and Polish soldiers manned an armored train. They were stationed at Bristol, because at that time the government was afraid that the Germans might invade from the west. So that this association is Army, Navy, Air Force, and after the war, many of them settled, and as Chris mentioned, they were joined by mainly women and children from camps in India and Africa. And then generations followed. And what is evident from the contributions is that the West Country people accepted Poles into their communities.
Wróg napadł na polskie zapas, kłócił ziemię, a wszystko dlatego, że Pan Jezus drzemie. Pan Bóg się obudził wielkim głosem wrzaśnie, a niech cieknie zleże jasny piorun trzaśnie. Zapalone miasta, zapalone chaty, dostaniesz ty plutru od nas, sędzie baty. Ja jem chleb kartkowy, ty ciasteczka jadłeś, mówisz, że kupiłeś, na pewno ukradłeś. Chociaż tu soczkopy śpiewa,